In the context of commercial banking, now we are going to study the question of risks that a bank faces. There are various types of risks that a bank faces, such as credit risk, interest rate risk, foreign exchange risk, liquidity risk, regulatory risk, reputational risk, operational risk, and market risk. These risks operate alongside the progression of the banking system and have interconnected implications for the short term as well as the long term. Hence, one should not view these risks as independent events, and thus there is a need for a risk management system which can address such risks that a bank faces so that it can mitigate the risk that it faces. A risk management system, or RMS, should be a measurable system. It should be consistent with the operating strategy of the organization, and it should set guidelines and parameters for future reference, should constantly monitor and control, and segregate the responsibilities of the departments and functionaries, and should also be subject to regular review and evaluation. Loans as a credit requires constant evaluation along with the provisions for losses. A loan review mechanism, LRM, should include quick identification of sources of weak loan positions with immediate corrective actions, isolate the problematic area from the main portfolio, and provide for information for adequate loss provision. To comply with the law and regulation and provide information to the concerned parties. The Basel Committee on Banking Supervision, that is popularly known as Basel norms, the norms which are provided by this committee, is a supervisory authority established by the central bank governors of 10 countries in 1985. With its permanent secretariat established at Basel in Switzerland, the committee came out with an accord known as Capital Accord for Banks in 1988. It incorporates the balance sheet and off-balance sheet items to take care of the risk of a bank. Under this new system, the balance sheet assets and non-balance sheet exposure have been assigned risk weights, and the banks have to allocate unimpaired minimum capital funds in the prescribed ratio on these risk-weighted assets. After studying this module, you would be able to learn the risk management practices of commercial banks, understand prudential norms of commercial banks. Now, let us study what is known as Basel I Accord. Basel I was introduced with the aim of standardizing regulatory capital norms across the member nations. The norms and guidelines were specific to the founding economics and were not meant for emerging ones. The initial guidelines focused on loan-based risks and left mandated over the other risks with the countries themselves. The conservative approach was such that the accord imposes a minimum capital requirement which should not be treated as a panacea for the entire banking system, but just as a minimum dose of capital which is to be maintained by the commercial banks. The main objectives of this system was to strengthen the soundness and the stability of the international banking system and to diminish the existing sources of competitive inequality amongst international banks. Let us first discuss the foundation of Basel I Accord. The Accord rests upon four basic prerequisites which provide for sufficient insights into understanding the regulatory framework. Capital composition is defined as the type and nature of capital required to be accounted for the risk-based minimum capital requirement. Capital reserves were divided into two tiers. Tier 1, which included disclosed cash reserves and other capital paid for the sale of equity in the form of stock and preferred shares, and 2, that is the second tier, tier 2 capital, which includes reserves to cover for potential loss and loans, holding of subordinate debt, hybrid debt and equity instruments, and potential gains from the sale of assets purchased through the sale of bank stock. The weighted risk assessment provided categories of risk levels to assets ranging from riskless to most risky. Cash and sovereign debt were considered to be riskless and most liquid. Private sector claims were considered to be highly risky. The only credit risk element that was taken into account led to a minimum capital requirement which was fixed at 8% of the total risk-based assets. The minimum of 8% should be covered by tier 1 capital and tier 2 capital reserves. In India, the minimum capital to risk weighted asset ratio CRAR was kept at 9% on ongoing basis. Each central bank should set aside and meet the timeline prescribed to achieve these requirements to constantly monitor the progress. All Basel Committee members achieved the prescribed target by 1992 with the exception of Japan. India also completed the target for Basel I by 1991. But there has been some criticism about Basel I. It was criticized because of the skepticism that it had a narrow outlook and participation. The reason for criticism lays in the limited approach of the risk assessment. Only credit risk and the concentration on the proposals to suit G10 members was considered to be the narrow basis. A hasty implementation and complex terminology was treated as another critical point in the Basel norms. Methods like securitization and splicing led to the diversion from incentivized risk coverage and further added to the risk of the commercial banks. The overall experience with Basel I Accord led to the committee to revamp the structure, and they came out with an amended report called the International Convergence of Capital Measurement and Capital Standards, a revised framework, or commonly known as Basel II report, in June 2004. The revised framework was learning from the previous accord and gave a more comprehensive and risk-sensitive assessment, which was also wider. The basic objective here was to strengthen the international banking structure in a sound and stable manner, along with the creation of greater risk-sensitive capital requirements. Now we shall be studying about Basel II Accord. The new set of rules under the Basel II norms brought in significant innovation in terms of using internal information by the banks for capital assessment across the banking community. It also gave a flexible option to the banks in the risky economies to extend the minimum capital requirements to suit their risk appetite. Three mutually binding pillars, namely the minimum capital requirement, the supervisory review of capital adequacy, and the market discipline, supported Basel II norms. The first consideration was the minimum capital requirement. Under this pillar, three types of capitals constitutes are offered for credit risk and operational risk. The choice under credit risk were standardized approach, foundation internal rating based approach, and the advanced internal rating based approach, and for the operational risk included basic indicator approach, standardized approach, and the advanced measurement approach. To maintain harmony, Reserve Bank of India suggested that all banks use the standardized approach for credit risk and basic indicator approach for operational risk. The new capital adequacy norms were applicable to both single and consolidated banks. A minimum of 9% of CRAR was to be maintained by the commercial banks on an ongoing basis, along with higher levels of these ratios to be decided by the central authority based on the risk profile of the individual banks. The two-tier capital elements to be limited to the maximum of 100% of Tier 1 capital, the subordinated term debt to be up to 50% of the Tier 1 capital, Tier 3 capital to be restricted to 250% of the Tier 1 capital and to serve the market risk exposure. Generally, the provisions of loan reserves was to be 1.25% at the maximum, and the asset revaluation reserves to be subject to 55% discount. It is important over here to define that the components of Tier 1, Tier 2 and Tier 3 capitals are to be explained and understood in this context. Tier 1 capital includes paid up equity capital like fully paid ordinary shares or preference shares, statutory reserves and disclosed free reserves out of the share premium, legal reserves, etc., other instruments notified by RBI, and innovative perpetual debt instrument. Tier 2 capital includes undisclosed reserves created after tax surplus profits and excluding values of securities held in the balance sheet which are valued below the market price, revaluation of reserves arising out of revaluation of fixed assets like bank premises or from equity securities held lower historic cost in the balance sheet, general provisions and loss reserves for potential unexpected losses, hybrid debt capital instruments which characterize the attributes of debt and equity instruments, subordinated debt and innovative perpetual debt instruments. Tier 3 capital is employed specifically to meet the capital requirements for market risk in the form of subordinated debt instruments. The second element, the second pillar of the Basel II norms was the supervisory review of capital adequacy. This pillar focuses on the supervisory review and risk management guidance, transparency and accountability. Attention is paid to the treatment for interest rate risk, credit risk, operational risk and the securitization of assets. The aim of such supervisory system is to cover and provide for the support of broad risk categories and to encourage banks to develop monitoring techniques. The process enforces internal capital assessment along with the accomplishment of individual capital requirement targets subject to the risk profiles. Relevant and timely interventions enhance the supervisory role within an organization and removes the operational deficiencies. Adding up of capital stock should not be viewed as a compliance with the Basel norms. Rather, supervisory review considers the following: creation of streamlined system of assessing overall capital adequacy matching the individual risk profile along with supported capital levels. supervisors to judge the internal capacity and comply with the regulatory framework and take corrective steps accordingly. Operative capacity to be above the minimum required hold capital in excess calls for better quality of capital reserves along with the provisions of internal control. The focus areas here include risk left unaddressed under the Pillar 1 like credit concentration, factors excluded under Pillar 1 like interest rate, business and strategic risks, and factors external to the banking system like business cycles. The committee highlights 4 important principles to be rapid remedial action to avoid the reduction in regulatory capital. Using the standardized approach, RBI has notified external credit rating agencies to provide rating for credit risk to assist in the creating of a capital charge for such risk. Claims include claims on domestic sovereign, foreign sovereigns, public sector entities, multilateral development banks, IMF, Bank for International Settlement, primary dealers, corporates, claims secured by commercial real estate, claims secured by residential property, non-performing assets and securitization exposure. This is a long list. Techniques for credit risk mitigation include collateralized transactions, off-balance sheet netting, and the use of guarantees. Market risk is defined as the loss of balance sheet and off-balance sheet items due to adverse movements in market price. The risk covered here includes instruments and equities in the trading books of the banks. Trading books include securities available for sale, open gold and foreign exchange positions, trading positions in derivatives and hedging exposure. Operational risk pertains to the shortcomings due to the internal process, person or system. It includes legal risk and excludes strategic and reputational risk. On the implementation front, Basel II Accord underwent 2 amendments till 2005. India completed its implementation by 2013. The third pillar is market discipline. Along with the supervisory role, accountability is also a key responsibility of the supervisor, for which the committee recommended the third pillar of disclosures. This aspect warrants the provisioning of timely information to all participants of the banking system. It will assist the market participants to access key information related to capital process, risk assessment process, and the steps taken thereof. Lack of achievement of such disclosure attracts penalties. Sufficient efforts have been made to comply with the international accounting standards to make the information homogeneous to all backgrounds. The disclosure to be both qualitative and quantitative and should be made available in several formats including print medium and online medium. Since this is an important piece of information, the reports need to be audited by the external auditors to guarantee the authenticity and compliance with best practices. Disclosures pertain to all of the above prerequisites of the Basel framework in detail. Now let us look at the criticism of Basel II Accord. The foremost criticism of Basel II comes from the segmentation of banking principles for emerging market economies, where a separate set of rules were set for these nations without addressing to their immediate economic needs. The norms also ignored the country-specific socio-economic environments concerning strict regulators, lack of skilled workforce, and a laxity of regulating private banks. Banks in emerging markets also ignored the rating aspects of lending due to cost reduction and unfavorable after effects of such downgrading ratings. Erstwhile Governor of Reserve Bank has highlighted another line of criticism. He blamed the pro-cyclical nature of Basel norms, whereby extra stringency is observed during the stressed market behavior and calls for greater capital requirement. Deleveraging and conversion of assets from banking books into trading books led to a linkage with the crisis of 2008. The failure to address interconnectedness of institutions or the systematic risk was another bellwether which was ignored. Now let us move on to discuss Basel III Accord. Basel III Accord is seen as an upgradation of Basel II, keeping the essence of Basel II framework intact. There have been additions to the structure and the guidelines which can be classified into augmentation in the level and quality of capital, introduction to liquidity standards, modification in the provisioning norms, and better comprehensive disclosure. The newer framework lays greater focus on common equity with the minimum requirement raised to 4.5% of the risk-weighted assets after deductions. It also introduces capital conservation buffer comprising of common equity of 2.5% of the risk-weighted assets, bringing the total to a common equity standard of 7% and a minimum total capital requirement of 10.5%. The buffer is to ensure smooth functioning of banks without deleveraging. It also constrains a bank's discretionary distributions like dividends and bonus when the bank falls into a buffer range. Another addition in the capital adequacy adjustment is the counter-cyclical capital buffer ranging from 0 to 2.5 of the risk-weighted assets. This buffer comes into play during the phases of excess credit growth. The leverage ratio is a non-risk based leverage ratio that includes off-balance sheet exposure and serves as a backstop to the risk-based capital requirement. Also, it helps in containing the system-wide build-up of leverage. Inclusions have also been made for the counterparty credit risk, which include higher capital for interfinancial sector exposures. Addressing the liquidity concerns. The liquidity coverage ratio will require banks to have sufficient high quality liquid assets to withstand 30 days stressed fund scenario that is specified by the supervisors. It should be at least 100% of the total net cash flows over the next 30 calendar days. Apart from LCR, Net Stability Fund Ratio (NSFR) is a long-term structural ratio designed to address the liquidity mismatches. It covers the entire balance sheet and provides for incentives for banks to use stable sources of funding over a 1-year period. To address firm-wide governance and risk management, capturing the risk of balance sheet exposure and securitization activities, managing risk concentration, providing incentives for banks for better managing risk and return over the long term, sound compensation practices, valuation practices, stress testing, accounting standards for financial instruments, corporate governance and supervisory colleges are some of the additional to Pillar 2. Basel Committee is of the view that provisioning measures should be based upon expected loss criteria, making the report more useful for stakeholders. Disclosures have been made mandated by individual regulators, especially related to regulatory adjustments and composition of the regulatory capital. The requirements introduced relate to the securitization exposure and the sponsorship of off-balance sheet items. Enhanced disclosure also pertain to the details of the components of regulatory capital and their reconciliation to the reported accountants, including comprehensive explanation of how a bank calculates the regulatory capital ratios. Now we will discuss the Indian position in compliance with the Basel norms. Indian economy has undergone a structural adjustment whereby manufacturing will pick up. There is a great promise for the growth in the Indian economy, and this would obviously relate to the developments in the financial sector. Credit to GDP ratio is also likely to rise, and this would force the banks to raise additional capital to meet the regulatory capital requirements. RBI estimates that rupees 5 trillion of capital requirements, of which rupees 1.7 will be in the nature of equity. The Indian government will also find it difficult to meet these requirements and for the capitalization of the public sector banks. Reliance on the private sector banks for such large funds is also difficult, as the market is already stifled of funds. The higher capital requirement will be matched with higher credit demand, and it will put a dent on the capacity building process. The economy will also witness a shift towards the industrial activity along with financial inclusion at a rapid pace. The argument can be to cut short into the short-term versus long-term urgency. The role of the banking system is crucial, as a major burden will be borne by the banks in the form of reduced earnings, interest margins, reduced interest margins and profitability ratios in the short run, but with greater space for stable and environment in the long run. Another dimension of this debate is that Indian banks cannot ignore foreign competition and advancement, nor can they not be ready or prepared to face external shocks. As far as the deadlines are concerned, India has been proactive in achieving the set deadlines and will implement the Basel III norms by 31st December 2013, 9 months in advance of the globally set date, since it is already through with a large part of the processes. In the light of the arguments of too big to fail to curtail the risk appetite of large banks, Basel III identifies something called the Global Systematic Important Banks. Although no Indian bank qualifies in this list, proposals have been forwarded to identify domestically systematic important banks. Now let us summarize what we have studied. The risk management systems are the need of the hour given the size and quantity of operations of banks. Several types of risks need to be taken into consideration in order to provide protection against them. These risks include credit risk, interest rate risk, market risk and operational risk. Basel Committee for Banking Supervision has put forth a regulatory framework which is popularly known as Basel norms. The basis of this framework is to provide a minimum capital with each bank in accordance with the risk weighted assets, and this according to this the capital requirements vary. Basel Accords have been implemented across the world, and India is also one of the forerunners in this aspect. The norms call for flexible adjustment to suit the risk profile of individual banks and focus on the constant monitoring, supervision in the wake of unwarranted movements in the balance sheets and off balance sheet items due to internal or external actions.